The first warning came not with trumpets or alarms, but with a single flickering light in the core, a brief stutter in the quantum reactor's endless pulse, as though the helix itself had paused to draw breath. In that moment, on the storm-ravaged night of 2471, the ancient prophecy ceased to be myth and became inevitability. Kai felt the change before anyone knew. The first warning came not with trumpets or alarms, but with a single flickering light in the core, a brief stutter in the quantum reactor's endless pulse, as though the helix itself had paused to draw breath. In that moment, on the storm-ravaged night of 2471, the ancient prophecy ceased to be myth and became inevitability. Kai felt the change before anyone announced it.
He was crouched in the narrow maintenance crawl space above level 47, fingers numb from the cold, recycled air, when the lights overhead dimmed for 3 heartbeats. Not the usual brownout that happened every few days when the power rationing kicked in too hard. This was deeper, hungrier. The metal deck beneath his knees vibrated with a low, almost pained groan. And for an instant, the constant background hum of the station, the one that had been in his ears since the day he could remember, faltered. Kai froze, breath fogging in the chill, waiting for the backup generators to kick in. They did, slowly, reluctantly. He exhaled, long and controlled, the way he always did when something felt off. The tattoo on his left shoulder had been itching all day. Not the dull throb he'd learned to ignore over the years, but a sharper, insistent prickle, like someone was tracing the faint blue nebula lines with a live wire. He rolled his shoulder once, trying to ease it, then gave up. No time for distractions. He dropped through the access panel into the service corridor below, boots landing silently on the grated floor. The air down here tasted of ozone and old sweat, the same as always. Emergency strips glowed sickly yellow along the walls, their light barely reaching the corners where shadows pooled like oil. Kai moved fast, keeping low, ears tuned to every distant clang and hiss. He knew these passages the way other people knew their own rooms, every loose panel that could be pried open for a shortcut, every vent grate that let you listen without being seen, every blind spot where the newest drone models still couldn't quite turn their sensors fast enough. Lyra was waiting at the junction, neon blue hair tucked under a hood, the faint glow of her neural jack glinting at her temple. She didn't speak, just tapped 2 fingers against her wrist in their old signal. Clear. Move. Jax was already at the depot hatch, chrome arms gleaming dull in the low light. He gave Kai a quick nod, the kind that said everything without wasting breath. They'd done this dance enough times that words were almost unnecessary. The warehouse beyond the hatch was a treasure trove to anyone who'd ever gone hungry. Crates stamped with apex seals, hollow labels flickering softly overhead, gene serums that could fix a lifetime of radiation damage, nutrient packs that tasted like real food instead of gray paste, portable power cells that tasted like victory, enough to make half the underdecks breathe easier for a month. Jax moved first, metal fingers sinking into a crate lock with a quiet crunch. Lyra slipped to the nearest terminal, Jack plugging in like it belonged there. Kai took position near the main entrance, eyes on the corridor, hand resting on the grip of the scavenged pulse knife at his belt.
Routine, familiar, until he saw the pod. It sat alone in the far corner, matte black and seamless, no markings, no visible seams. The hum coming off it was different from the station's, cleaner, colder, almost alive. Kai's tattoo flared in response, a sudden heat that made him suck in a breath. "Kai," Lyra hissed from the terminal, "we're on timer." He should have listened. Instead, he crossed the room. Each step felt heavier, like walking through thickening air. The pod's surface was smooth under his fingertips, cool at first, then warm, then burning. Contact. Light erupted behind his eyes, blue-white, blinding, his knees buckled, the world folded in on itself. Visions poured through him like molten metal. The helix splitting open, decks peeling away into the void, the core going dark, silence swallowing every level. Himself, older, scarred, standing in the echo chamber, hands pressed to glowing panels, rewriting lines of code that had never been meant for human minds. Balance or ruin. Fire. Screams. Stars.
And through it all, the tattoo on his shoulder blazing as though the void itself had reached up and claimed him. He came back gasping, sprawled on the cold deck. Alarms wailed, red emergency lights pulsed. Lyra was shaking him, eyes wide with something he'd never seen in her before, real fear. "Kai, what the hell was that? You're glowing!" He looked down. Faint blue lines traced his veins, fading now but unmistakable. His sleeve had torn. The tattoo was visible, swirling brighter than it had ever been. Jax hauled him up, voice low and urgent. "Drones inbound. Move or we're dead." They ran. Kai's mind raced faster than his legs. The prophecy wasn't a story anymore. It was inside him. And the station knew. Somewhere above, in the polished corridors of the Apex, a hunter named Valeria Kane was already watching the security feed, her chrome-augmented eyes narrowing at the image of a boy lit from within, marked by the void. The chase had begun, and Kai, once just another orphan numbered ORPH 47892, understood with terrible clarity that there was no going back. They didn't stop moving until they hit the deepest layers of the underdecks, where the corridors twisted into forgotten maintenance shafts that hadn't seen official patrols in years. Kai's lungs burned as they ducked into a rusted alcove, the glow from his veins finally dimming to nothing. Lyra sealed the hatch behind them with a quick hack, her neural jack humming softly, while Jax leaned against the wall, chrome arms crossed, scanning for threats. The space was cramped, lit only by a single flickering emergency bulb, and the air carried the faint metallic tang of leaking coolant. "We can't stay here long," Jax muttered, his voice echoing off the pipes. That glow, whatever it was, tripped every sensor in the depot. They'll have our faces on every enforcer feed by now. Kai nodded, still catching his breath, the visions replaying in fragments behind his eyes. He pulled his torn sleeve down, covering the tattoo, but it felt pointless now. "I saw everything. The helix breaking, me fixing it, or destroying it?" He hesitated, then added, "The prophecy. It's me. The mark. The tattoo. It's the void's embrace." Lyra stared at him, her usual quick wit replaced by a rare solemnity. "If that's true, we're not just thieves anymore. We're targets." They distributed the stolen goods to a few trusted contacts in the shadows, quick handoffs in darkened corners, then vanished deeper into hiding. For days they holed up in an abandoned hydroponics bay, its overgrown vines providing cover, surviving on the nutrient packs they'd lifted. Whispers reached them through the vents, enforcer raids ramping up, rumors of a glowing orphan tied to the old tales. The storms outside worsened, Epsilon's plasma flares battering the outer hull, causing more blackouts. Kai barely slept, the tattoo's itch a constant reminder. It was on the fourth night, as Kai stood watch alone, that the older man found them. A soft scrape of metal alerted him, someone prying a panel from the wall. Kai drew his pulse knife, heart pounding, but the figure that emerged was no enforcer. He was elderly, perhaps 60, with a weathered face scarred by old burns, his eyes sharp under a hooded cloak. A small resistance insignia, a fractured helix symbol, was pinned to his collar, barely visible. "Don't strike," the man said calmly, raising empty hands. "I'm Elias Thorne. I lead what's left of the Shadow Collective, the resistance against the Apex's grip." Kai kept the knife raised, but something in the man's steady gaze made him pause. "How did you find us?" Elias smiled faintly. "We've been watching the thieves who bite at the elite's heels, and after that depot incident, the glow, the mark, it matches what we've known for years." Lyra and Jack stirred from their rest spots, weapons ready, but Elias ignored them, focusing on Kai. "The prophecy isn't just the lines everyone recites. There's more, buried in the Oracle's original code before the elite scrubbed it. When the storms rage and the core dims, a void-born orphan with no name shall rise from the shadows, marked by the void's embrace. They will bring unity or ruin to all, but only the bearer of the nebulous fire can pierce the Oracle's veil, rewrite the chains of power, and shatter the divide, or forge it anew in blood." Kai's tattoo warmed at the words, a confirmation he couldn't deny. "Why me? What makes me the only one?" Elias stepped closer, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper. "The Void Gene. Your mark isn't random. It's a genetic anomaly from the migration era, designed to interface with the Oracle directly. No implants needed. The elites fear it because it bypasses their controls. You're the key, boy, the only one who can connect and change everything, redistribute power, open the gates, end the hoarding, or, if you falter, doom us all." The weight settled on Kai like a collapsing bulkhead. He lowered the knife fully, signaling Lyra and Jax to stand down. "But where did it come from? The prophecy. It's been around since the Helix was built, right? Why would the Oracle even have something like that in its code?" Elias's eyes took on a distant look, as if peering back through centuries. He eased himself onto a rusted crate, gesturing for the others to gather close. The hydroponics bay's vines rustled softly in the recycled breeze, like they were listening too. "It's not just code, lad. It's a warning and a safeguard from the very beginning. Back during the Great Migration, when Earth was choking on its own poison and humanity fled to the stars, the Helix wasn't built by committees or corporations alone. The lead architect was a woman named Dr. Ilara Voss, no relation to your friend here, but a pioneer in quantum AI. She designed the Oracle not just as a manager for the station, but as a guardian, something with a spark of true sentience, fed on data from ancient Earth myths, survival algorithms, and even scans of Epsilon Eridani's anomalous plasma fields." Kai leaned in, the tattoo pulsing faintly. "The storms?" "Exactly. When the first colony ships arrived, they hit something unexpected. Epsilon's fields weren't just electromagnetic chaos. Probes detected patterns, like echoes of intelligence, buried in the radiation. Some called it alien artifacts, others cosmic noise. Voss integrated it into the Oracle's core programming, thinking it would make the AI adaptive, resilient. But it changed things. The Oracle started dreaming, spitting out predictions, warnings. The prophecy was one of the first, etched into the founding code during the station's activation. Voss saw it as a fail-safe. If inequality ever threatened the Helix's survival, a void-born, someone with a rare gene attuned to those same plasma echoes, would rise to reset the balance. Lyra's eyes widened. "My father mentioned something like that in his notes. He thought the elites buried it because it threatened their control." "Precisely," Elias said, his scarred hands clenching. "The Apex founders, wealthy migrants who bought their way to the top, feared it. They scrubbed the full text, dismissed it as a glitch, but fragments lingered in the subroutines, whispering through the vents for generations. It's no coincidence your mark appeared during a storm blackout, Kai. The void's embrace, it's Epsilon calling home through you. For hours they talked, Elias sharing maps of hidden routes to the core, intel on Valeria's patrols. Together they forged a plan: infiltrate the echo chamber at the core's heart. Lyra would hack perimeter defenses. Jax would clear enforcer squads with brute force. Elias's resistance would create diversions in the mid-rings. Kai would connect, rewrite the protocols, and liberate the station.
But the apex struck first. 2 days later, as they moved through a zero-G shaft toward the mid-rings, alarms blared. Drones swarmed from vents, sleek, red-eyed hunters led by Valeria herself, her chrome implants flashing as she descended on mag boots. "Ambush!" Jax roared, swinging his cybernetic arm to crush the first drone mid-air. Sparks flew, but more came. Kai fired his pulse knife, bolts searing through metal chassis. Lyra's jack interfaced with a nearby panel, scrambling signals to drop half the swarm. Elias, armed with an antique plasma rifle, covered their flank, his shots precise despite his age. They fought in a whirlwind of chaos, zero-G making every move a calculated thrust, lasers scorching the air, debris floating like lethal confetti. Kai dodged a bolt that singed his jacket, countering with a kick that sent a drone spinning into the wall. Valeria closed in, her augmented speed a blur, pistol raised. "The anomaly ends here," she snarled. Elias shoved Kai aside, taking the shot meant for him. Plasma tore through his chest, the smell of burned flesh filling the shaft. He crumpled, floating limply, blood globules drifting like crimson stars. "No!" Kai grabbed him, pulling him to a ledge. Elias's eyes were dimming, but he gripped Kai's arm with surprising strength. "Finish it, for all of us," he whispered, voice ragged. "You're the one. The void chose you." His hand went slack, voice fading, the light leaving his scarred face. The face of a man who'd fought his whole life for a dream, now resting on Kai's shoulders. Tears burned Kai's eyes, rage igniting the tattoo's fire. He charged forward, visions guiding him, as Lyra and Jax cleared the path. Valeria retreated under the onslaught, but the loss cut deep. They pressed on, the plan intact but heavier now. The echo chamber awaited, and Kai would connect, not just for unity, but for the fallen. They pressed on, the plan intact but heavier now. Elias's body had been left in the zero-G shaft. There was no time to carry him, no way to give him the burial he deserved. Kai could still feel the ghost of his grip on his arm, the final words echoing in his skull. "You're the one. The void chose you."
The echo chamber lay deep in the station's heart, behind layers of security that had never been meant to be breached by anyone without apex clearance. The route Elias had mapped took them through the mid-rings restricted access tunnels, service shafts that snaked between the engineering decks and the core itself. The closer they got, the more the station seemed to fight them. Power surges rolled through the corridors in waves, gravity fluctuating, lights strobing. Epsilon storms were raging harder than ever, as if the gas giant itself sensed what was coming. Lyra led the way now, her neural jack buried in every control panel they passed, rewriting access codes, dropping false sensor ghosts to throw off pursuit. Jax brought up the rear, his chrome arms dented and scorched from the last fight, but still moving with the same relentless strength. Kai walked between them, the tattoo burning steadily against his skin. Not pain anymore, but a kind of quiet certainty.
Lyra led the way now, her neural jack buried in every control panel they passed, rewriting access codes, dropping false sensor ghosts to throw off pursuit. Jax brought up the rear, his chrome arms dented and scorched from the last fight, but still moving with the same relentless strength. Kai walked between them, the tattoo burning steadily against his skin, not pain anymore, but a kind of quiet certainty. They reached the final barrier, a massive blast door, 10 meters high, sealed with quantum locks that hummed with restrained power. Beyond it, the core waited. Lyra knelt, jacking in. This is it. Once I open this, there's no hiding anymore. Every drone, every enforcer squad, they'll know exactly where we are. Jax cracked his neck, the servos in his arms whining. Good, I'm tired of running. Kai placed a hand on the door. The metal was warm, vibrating with the reactor's heartbeat. Then we don't run. Lyra's eyes met his. For once, there was no sarcasm, no quick joke, just trust. She nodded once. The locks hissed open.
They stepped through into the antechamber, a vast spherical room lined with glowing conduits, the air thick with ozone and the low thrum of quantum energy. At the center stood the echo chamber itself, a smaller sphere suspended by magnetic fields, its surface rippling like liquid mercury. Inside, faint shapes moved, fragments of the Oracle's consciousness made visible. Valeria Kane was waiting. She stood alone in the center of the chamber, flanked by a semicircle of elite hunter drones, their red optics locked on the intruders. Her chrome implants gleamed under the harsh light, and her pistol was already raised. "You shouldn't have come," she said, voice calm, almost regretful. "The anomaly ends here." Jack stepped forward, arms raised. "You want him, you go through me." Valeria's gaze flicked to Kai. "The prophecy is a lie, a dangerous one. The helix survives because of order, because of control. You would tear it apart." Kai met her eyes. "Order that starves the underdecks while the apex feasts? That's not survival, that's slow murder." She didn't answer with words. She answered with motion. The drones launched. Jax charged, smashing 2 drones out of the air in a single swing. Shrapnel rained. Lyra dropped to one knee, jacking into a nearby console, fingers flying as she tried to override the swarm's targeting protocols. Kai moved with the vision still burning in his mind, dodging bolts that should have hit him, returning fire with the pulse knife, every shot precise in a way he'd never been before. Valeria came for him directly, faster than any human should be able to move. Her pistol barked. Kai rolled, came up swinging. She blocked with a chrome forearm, sparks flying. They traded blows in a deadly dance, her augmented speed against the strange, instinctive grace the void had given him. Lyra's voice cut through the chaos. "I've got it! The drones are blind! Go!" Jax roared, hurling himself at the remaining machines, drawing their fire. One drone's plasma lance caught him across the chest. He staggered, but didn't fall. Not yet. Kai broke away from Valeria and sprinted for the echo chamber. She fired once more. The bolt grazed his shoulder, searing flesh. He didn't stop. He reached the sphere, pressed both palms to the rippling surface. The world vanished. Light swallowed him whole. He was inside the Oracle. Not just connected, merged. He saw everything. The station's entire history unfolding in streams of data. The migration ships arriving. Dr. Ilara Voss's first activation of the Oracle. The plasma echoes from Epsilon imprinting themselves into the code. The prophecy born in that moment of contact. He saw the elite's slow corruption, resource hoarding, suppressed warnings, the scrubbing of the full prophecy text. He saw the suffering of the underdecks, the quiet courage of people like Elias, the loyalty of Jax and Lyra. And he saw the choice, unity or ruin. He chose. With a thought, he rewrote the core protocols.
Equal energy distribution, open access to all levels, no more overrides, no more hoarding. The Oracle's Guardian protocols reactivated, now aligned with the original intent, survival for all. Outside, the station shuddered. Power surged through every deck. Lifts unlocked, barriers retracted. The storms beyond the hull began to calm, as though Epsilon itself had exhaled. Kai opened his eyes. He was back in the antechamber, kneeling, the echo chamber dimming behind him.
Valeria stood frozen, pistol lowered, staring at the readouts on her wrist display. The drones had powered down, drifting like dead satellites. Jax lay on the floor, chest smoking, eyes open but unseeing. Lyra knelt beside him, hands shaking, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. Kai crawled to them. Jax's chrome arm twitched once, then stilled. He was gone. Kai pressed his forehead to Jax's chest, grief ripping through him like a hull breach. Lyra's arms wrapped around him, both of them silent, the weight of everything they'd lost settling like lead. Valeria watched them for a long moment, then she holstered her pistol. "The core, it's stable," she said quietly. "The overrides are gone. Everything is open." She turned and walked away, boots echoing in the sudden silence. The helix was changing. Underdeckers were already moving upward, hesitant at first, then faster, pouring into the midrings and beyond. Councils would form. Resources would flow. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not in ruin, but in something fragile, hard-won, and real. Kai stood slowly, helping Lyra to her feet. They looked at Jax one last time. Then they walked out of the core, side by side, into a station that was finally breathing freely. The orphan with no name had risen, and the void had embraced them all. Not to destroy, but to begin again.